My mother when she was a tank instructor in 1984. Me looking up to my fighter pilot dad in the late 1980s. My mom as a Red Cross volunteer in World War II. She had her own radio show in the Pacific Theater to counteract Tokyo Rose 1944. My Uncle Billy just turned 90, so here's him in his boat during the early 80s. My mama circa 83. This explains why I'm the uncoolest person ever, cause she took it all. Oh, and that bike. She built it. Chatting with my dad while he was in break back in the 80s. My aunt in her high school rodeo in 1973. My dad's graduation photo, circa 1970s. My dad when he was 17, in a small village in the Netherlands, 1981. He'd meet my mom a year later. My mom, age 15, smoking at an Allman Brothers concert with a broken arm. My dad on his 80s. He was a US Marine, had a contagious smile, and a heart of gold. My mom and dad on their wedding day. My dad and his pet monkey in Vietnam, 1966. A friend of my father's, telling off a CYCN member, Auburn 1985. My dear mom in the 70s with her German Shepherd and Manta. One of my favorite photos of my parents in the late 70s. My father halfway through motorcycling across Africa. My mom thinks she is so hardcore in her Fleetwood Mac tank top at age 18. My dad fishing on a nuclear submarine. My mom flew helicopters for the Army in the 80s. My dad and his veterinarian mother with their pet lion, which they raised for 2 years. My parents in 1972, in front of their store in Paris. My girlfriend's dad after flipping his '73 Mustang on the highway. My dad in Saudi Arabia in the 70s working as a US military contractor diving in the Red Sea. My dad diving off the starboard fin of a submarine and into the Pacific Ocean in the summer. My mother skateboarding barefoot in California. My dad with David Bohl in a vacation in Greece. My mom holding myself whilst writing her master thesis on the Macintosh Classic 2. My father got drunk with some friends and caught a record-breaking tuna in Newfoundland. My dad at marching band practice. My dad skateboarding at Hyde School 1982. I think he was cooler than me. My dad sculpting a bust of mom 1980s. My friend Pattons are celebrating their 47th anniversary this week. Here's them being badasses in the 70s. My mom at 16 years old with her Camaro in 1975. My dad in France is the 70s. Ryan Gosling might need a paternity test. My dad teaching math in Southern California. My mom skating with a broken wrist in the late 70s. My mom circa 1986. Happy Mother's Day, y'all. My dad in Vietnam in 1971. Didn't know this photo existed until I came across it randomly on the internet. He cried when he saw it. My dad taking a smoking break while fighting Saddam Hussein's army in the 80s. My dad, Taken for Surfer magazine. My mom was a homicide detective in the 80s. I found a photo of my dad cooking a barbecue on top of a moving submarine. For my first cake day, I present my dad. He wasn't famous, but his moves were pretty cool. 48 beers and a unicycle, my dad in the early 80s. My mom working at NASA, 1974. My favorite picture of my mom. She was the only girl in her welding class in 1984. Bird High School. Pretty rad picture of my dad when he was 22, in Texas, taken in 1987. That Get a Blaster is epic. My dad in Alaska, circa 1980. I hope to be half the man he is one day. Happy Father's Day. My dad and his cousins, back in the day. I don't think the cool gene was passed down to me. My dad at his first job at NASA. It is also his birthday today. My father who shipped his bike over to England and rode all over Europe on it. Mom spinning records at KWKH, Shreveport. Late 1960s, my dad. 1969 Vietnam, my father's version of a selfie before selfies were a thing. Chuck Norris pinned by my dad. My friend's dad trained SEALs in the Navy. This was what his everyday job looked like. My mother and father being young and awesome on Santorini Island. I was conceived there. My dad a zookeeper in 1992. He was the only one at the time who could call the Ryans by name, and they would come running like dogs. My father in 1982. When I asked him what he was doing in this photo, he said, shooting an album cover. My mom when she lived in Alaska with her husky puppy.